There are certain lines we encounter only once, and yet they remain with us long after we have forgotten where we first heard them, because something in them felt uncomfortably precise. This text began with one of those lines, something to sit with, because it points to a tension that has become difficult to ignore. We live in a time where almost everything can be expressed, where words are constant, images are constant, reactions are constant. There is always something being said. And yet, beneath that constant movement, something else remains untouched, unspoken. There is a difference between expression and exposure, between sharing and revealing. Much of what is communicated moves outward easily. The acceptable parts, the polished fragments, the versions of ourselves that can be arranged and understood. But what does not fit that structure often remains elsewhere, unarticulated, unexamined. Speaking it requires a different kind of honesty. And honesty, when it is real, rarely feels performative. So a strange imbalance begins to form. On one side, there is an abundance of expression. On the other, a quiet accumulation of what is left unsaid. Thoughts that are postponed, feelings that are redirected, questions that are never followed to their conclusion. Not all at once, but gradually, almost invisibly. We tell ourselves it is nothing, that it will pass, that it does not require our attention, and so we move around it. We fill the space with something else. Noise, activity, distraction, explanation. Anything that keeps us from having to remain still long enough to encounter what is waiting there. But what is left unspoken does not disappear. It gathers quietly, and over time, it begins to take a different weight. Not loud enough to interrupt us, not clear enough to be named, but present, persistent, until eventually we begin to feel it, not as a thought, but as a kind of pressure, a distance from ourselves that is difficult to explain, a sense that something essential has been left behind somewhere we no longer visit. And it is here that the line returns, not as a metaphor, but as a recognition. Fools, do you not know silence like a cancer grows? Not the silence of stillness, not the silence that allows something to emerge, but the silence that comes from avoidance, from turning away repeatedly from what asks to be seen. There is a cost to that kind of silence. a cumulative cost. It shapes the way we move through our lives, the way we relate to others, the way we understand ourselves. We begin to speak around things instead of through them. We become fluent in what is safe and uncertain in what is true. And over time, that distance becomes harder to cross, because the longer something remains unspoken, the more difficult it becomes to bring it into the light. It has grown larger, and we have grown unfamiliar with it. And yet, the answer is not more exposure, not more performance. That is only another form of avoidance. What is needed is something more deliberate. A willingness to encounter ourselves without exposure. And then, perhaps, to allow a small part of that honesty to exist somewhere outside of us, somewhere with someone. A conversation that is not curated, a moment that is not structured, a space in which nothing needs to be presented as anything other than what it is. It does not require many people, sometimes 2 or 3 is enough, a friend, a listener. A place where the distance between what is felt and what is said begins to close. Because what we keep in silence does not weaken, it deepens. And what is spoken, even imperfectly, begins to loosen its hold, not all at once, but enough. Enough to remind us that we are still in contact with ourselves, that there is still a bridge we can start to see. It's there. The fog can begin to dissipate, slowly, and we might start to see it, a bridge towards ourselves, a more honest relationship with oneself. And that bridge can still be crossed before the silence becomes something we no longer know how to leave.